What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my selections for the NBA All-Star Game, starting with obviously the starters, and we're going to start with the Western Conference. And the first choice is pretty obvious. It's going to be the team captain for 4 years straight now, and that's going to be Alex Caruso.
Are you dumb?
Pardon me?
Are you dumb?
I think she's
I
dumb.
think she's dumb.
I think she's dumb.
think
Are
you're
you, like, medically speaking?
All jokes aside, it's actually going to be LeBron James, and I'm really excited about the Eastern Conference captain this year because it's no longer Giannis.
I'm really about to start calling him Giannis. Ain't he a fool, bro? Like, come on.
Which means we're actually going to get decently fair teams as far as talent goes. I know the games were close, but that's only because these guys aren't really trying until the game gets, towards the end there, and then they actually start playing and LeBron's team wins every year. So now we'll actually get a fair game. But for our next front court player for the Western Conference starters is going to be another obvious one. He's playing back-to-backs this year. He's playing most games this year. He's going to be suiting up for this one, and that's Kawhi Leonard. And the next Eastern Conference front court starter is going to be a man that's an MVP candidate this year. He's had a monster season, and that man is Joel Embiid. And for our third and final front court starter for the Western Conference, we're going to have to go with another guy that's had a great season. He's really established himself in the league, and he's actually going to take the place over Anthony Davis because AD has had a really off year this season, and that man is Nikola Jokic. And then finally, for our third and final Eastern Conference frontcourt starter, we're going to go with Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's not the captain, thank God. But now let's head over to the guards, and for our first Western Conference starting guard, we had to go with Steph Curry. He's
Curry,
back,
man.
he's healthy, and he's back to MVP form, carrying the Warriors, or what's left of them anyways. And he's been playing great this year. He's our first starter for the Western Conference guards. And for our first Eastern Conference guard, we had to give him something. He's been carrying a dead team. This team's going nowhere. I don't know how he hasn't requested a trade yet. I think he deserves it just for not requesting a trade, and that's Bradley Beal. And for our final Western Conference starter, we have Luka Doncic. It's close between him and Dame, but I'm just going to give Luka the edge because he's playing like Luka again. What can I say? And he started last year. And now this is where it gets really tricky. The final starter for the Eastern Conference, there's so many great players here. You can go with James Harden, you can go with Kyrie, you can even go with Jaylen Brown. But I think I'm going to give it to James Harden because he's started so many years in a row, and they typically are loyal when it comes to the All-Star Game, especially with the fan voting and stuff. I know Kyrie and Jaylen Brown have been off the charts, but I'm going to think, this is a prediction again. This is not who I want. This is a prediction. So I'm going to go with James Harden. And now we move on to the All-Star reserves. And first is pretty obvious. In the Western Conference frontcourt position, we're going to have Anthony Davis. I know there's an argument that he should be starting this year, but AD really hasn't been AD this year. He's only been averaging 22 points per game. At first I thought it was health and maybe injuries that were affecting him, and then I was thinking maybe it was the short offseason from the bubble, but I'm not really sure, to be honest. Either way, he definitely deserves to be the first reserve for the All-Star Game. And for the first reserve for the Eastern Conference, I'm going to go with Jayson Tatum. He's been having a great season, and the Celtics have been playing pretty well. I know their record hasn't been the best, but with this filled season, no one's record really stands out other than Utah and maybe LA. And for our second Western Conference All-Star reserve, we're going to have to go with Paul George. I know he gets hated on a lot, but that was for his play in the playoffs. He's back to normal in the regular season at least. He's averaging 25 points per game, and he's definitely deserving to make the All-Star team this year. And for our second Eastern Conference reserve, we got to go with Jimmy Butler, the man that dragged the Heat to the finals and played like an animal in the finals. I mean, his team's fallen off this year. He's had some health problems. He's definitely still deserving to make the All-Star team. And for our third frontcourt reserve for the Western Conference, Zion Williamson. He's averaging 24 points per game, and the Pelicans are just under 500. This is the NBA. They're trying to make money. He's going to make the All-Star game. And look at all the votes he's getting too from the fans. He's going to get in. And for our third Eastern Conference reserve for the All-Star game, we got to go with Domantas Sabonis. If you haven't really heard of him, you got to watch my video on him. It's called Domantas Sabonis Has Been a Nightmare, because he really has been. He's been putting up great numbers, and his team's been doing pretty well. So he's got to make the All-Star game this year. He might not have deserved it last year, but he definitely deserves it this year. And now for our guards. For the first reserve Western Conference guard, with Damian Lillard. He's been putting up 30 again this year, and pretty much every year that he scores this much, he makes it, and it's well deserved. I picture him in this All-Star game. And now when we go back to the Eastern Conference, this is where we select Jaylen Brown. Again, he easily could have been a starter. I just have him on the bench just because of how they normally do things. James Harden's been in it for quite a few years in a row now, and even Kyrie could have made it, but this is where I'm having Jaylen Brown. Could be easily wrong, but this is what I'm going with. And then for the last reserve guard for the West, I'm going to go with Donovan Mitchell, and that's just because his team has the best record and he's been playing great. No matter what Shaq says or what he leads you to believe, Donovan Mitchell's been playing great this year, and he's definitely going to make the All-Star game on the bench. And then the last reserve should be pretty obvious. It's going to be Kyrie. He's been playing lights out this season, and he could have easily have started, but those are your All-Star reserves, or at least what I think they're going to be. And now we move on to the 2 wildcard spots for each team. Again, doesn't matter what position they play. We're starting out west with our first wildcard reserve, and this one's actually pretty easy. It's going to be Devin Booker. But now this is where things start to get a little tricky, because in the East, you could easily say like Ben Simmons, for example. But Ben Simmons is only averaging 13, 8, and 8. And a few years back when he was averaging 15, 8, and 8, he still didn't make the All-Star game. He normally needs to average around 17, 18 points per game to get in. And also his efficiency has gone down to a few years back as well. So I'm thinking that he actually won't make it in, and it's going to be Zach LaVine as the first guard, because he's averaging almost 29 points per game. He's also got a lot more votes than Ben Simmons does. But for the last reserve in the wildcard spot for the West, there's actually 2 different approaches you can take, because sometimes they get a veteran that's a good leader and isn't the best player available, but they get him for his leadership and because of how many years he's put in. So like a Chris Paul, for example. But other times they just take the best player available, a younger guy who's got a lot more points per game, a lot better stats, all that. I'm thinking this year they're going to just do the best player available who's going to score more points. So I'm going to say Brandon Ingram. But it could easily be Chris Paul for that other reason. And of course, you got guys like John Morant and guys like that could have made it. But I'm going to go with Brandon Ingram. And then same thing for the Eastern Conference. I'm just going to take one of the better players available, and that's Trae Young. But I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. Who do you have taken for your last couple reserves? Also, just in general, what players would you have taken over others? Who's starting over who? It's really close this year, and it was really hard to make this list. But just to quickly recap, in the West, we have LeBron, Kawhi, Jokic, Steph Curry, Luka, Dame, Zion, Donovan Mitchell, Paul George, AD, Devin Booker, and Brandon Ingram. And then in the East, we have KD, Embid, Giannis, Beal, James Harden, Kyrie, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Jimmy Butler, Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, and Trae Young. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe for more NBA content just like this, and I'll see you in the next upload.